Of course, sales weren't enough. There were other things to do with your life, apart from holding a tie like a limp snake.
Have a hierarchy of important mediums to work in. They're all the same. They just some are more convenient to work in at certain times. I think, well, for me anyway, it's very important to work in lots of different ways, because I get stale if I'm doing something for too long, and that really I return to painting after doing a lot of prints and maybe doing a lot of drawings and keeping things moving around. And I like the idea of being able to, in some ways, try to transfer some of the techniques from one thing to another, and the thing's much more fluid, and that I'm not so precious about it. And I feel that that's coming from something where it's much smaller scale, it's drawing, so it doesn't really matter, you can throw it away. I'm not interested really in reporting and looking at reality, so-called realism, but I'm interested in sort of creating some kind of mood. And so sometimes the pictures have got a kind of edgy quality to them, which really, I suppose, in one ways reflects what I feel. I've used the paintings, particularly the Salesman pictures, in performances, and I like to have them around the room in the gallery and use them and treat them nearly as props, and try to, in some ways, address the pictures and talk to the characters in the pictures and establish some kind of dialogue between the people in the pictures and myself, because I'll be dressed at that time as like one of the characters in the pictures. And I like to sometimes think of what this person's chin would really have been like. Would it have actually had a cleft in it? And where would the neck go? And would there be a collar, a tie around here, or maybe something else? This can be sort of carried out on a much larger scale, which you can extend the whole area of the painting, make it sort of into an installation. Well, here's an interesting little design coming up here. Let's have this bit go like that.
I mean, he can brush with that lot. He's got more than 3.
Really brush.
He's a brusher.
At this stage, it's all kind of like back to abstract, and then as I started to work on it, things start to suggest themselves, and I kind of follow them along, follow up these ideas. But at this stage of the picture, it's I'm still playing it by ear, and I don't really know what's going to happen with it. Slightly a lost abstract picture, looking for some characters. In the paintings, there's a sort of shifting series of characters who are sort of moving through the pictures, and some of the characters in the pictures are from earlier works, so that you have a kind of funny time element in it. Some of them might be from when I used to paint pictures about Salesman, which was what I was at one time. So elements of that still stay in the picture, and it acts as a kind of, I suppose in some ways, a kind of self-portrait. This is when I paint something like that, I'm putting myself into the picture, but I'm turning it round sometimes. It's not, the setting has sort of gone, the storyline has sort of disappeared, and the narrative element is sort of teased out, and they're left with a sort of, in some ways, sometimes just a confrontation between me and other people, or some other people between themselves. So it sort of shifts in and out. I'm not always in the picture, but there's always a certain element of me somewhere in there. So it sounds rather ambiguous, but that's the way I feel about it. And that there's also a kind of mixture between now, I think with the pictures, there's a return to certain sort of abstract ideas that I had a lot earlier when I used to paint like that. And I'm trying now to combine all phases of work that I've done into one picture. So I don't really care whether whether one bit doesn't exactly fit with another. It starts to make sense as a painting to me now. And
the shadow that the salesman sometimes cast when the light was good, when it was summer, reminded him of his uncle. I mentioned to him that a career in selling would take him places.
this is a drawing of my mother when I visited, when I was at home once. This is a picture of, this is a drawing of my father. It's done in or improved in some cases. This book actually was very interesting because I made quite a lot of pictures from this book at the time. This is called Whose Dog Are You? And this book sort of got personalities just before the war, 1938, and they are stars of stage, screen and radio and aristocracy, plus their pets, and it shows you the type of position that people took up in relationship to their animals. And this was a little drawing made when I was in St Ives for a holiday. That's what it felt like being in St Ives on a rainy day. This is Miss Frances Day and a famous bulldog. You can see I was thinking about actually using this for a painting in a very laborious way. I drew it all out and squared it all up and thought I'd transfer that to a painting, but I never made it. I made a painting of this one. There's a kind of odd suggestion in this picture, which I sort of took up on. This is a picture of Gracie Fields and with a dog. I liked the way the way the head was, the position of the head, and the way the hand was sort of pointing there. So I used a bit of this one in a painting called Nature Lesson. This is another photograph that I've used as kind of source material for a painting. And what I like to do with these, I like to start with one of the figures in the picture, and then I like to introduce another one. And in this one, I had a figure kind of coming out from here, who also wants to touch the dog. This is the kind of source material I might have. I've got lots of things with pictures of animals, which I sometimes take out of context. Just take the bit of that out there and stick it in with another picture. There's a dog talking to a man. This is another. In some of the pictures, the people are incredibly blank, and they're not really doing a lot. They're not really indicating a lot of emotion in their faces. It looks like in some ways they're slightly transfixed by the experience that they're having at that moment. That experience is either is coming from inside their heads, or is their reflection on what's happening elsewhere in the picture. And in some ways there's people sort of smiling, but it's not particularly sort of warm sensation. In some ways it's more like a kind of grimace. And there's the expressions on people's face don't always relate to their immediate surroundings or what they're actually wanting to communicate, but seem to be playing parts or acting emotions.